Robert F. Kennedy means rob and F the Kennedys, as RFK puts the F in F the Kennedys. That's the news and views of they who pay for it and say whatever we tell them to print. Hint, hint, mint, mint, blood tint. Yes, RFK is said and read in headlines recently to be shamefully shaking Americans' faith in science. Because I guess we're back to the gospel of science, when the law of science overrules all the lands as hands are tied to roll up the sleeve, because we must trust and believe in the science when it's jabbing us in the arm, masking the truth and asking for it to mandate our fates. Follow the science. Trust the science. I believe in science, they would say to achieve their way. But as of late, the trends bend to not being so compliant, as the reliance on science became under blame for shaming anyone claiming biology mattered in the gender debate. But hey, mandate the science when it works for you, and let him mandate himself as a woman. Because after all, what is that anyways? Nobody knows. Based on science, it's only based on science fiction feelings and identity as ideology. As the psychology, cuckoo, is not even science-based. It's meme traced to a 1950s underqualified so-called doctor, ironically named Dr. Money, who would wager, I think it's funny, to coin a gender as social construct. After all, this deconstructive surgery is big booming business for the goose and for the handler holding his scalpel and foreskin of sin. Unfortunate for the victims of, I guess we can call social science, and certainly be inclusive enough to call diversive political science. Whoa. But if your faith in science is recently challenged by the transgression against the transhumanism movement, not by the legitimate transgender people, but more by the woke mob of blue-hair Frankenstein doctors who hypocritically swore a Hippocratic oath to do no harms to their victims or patients, and the political power that backed it up within the hour, can you have on the medieval medical slab and castrate you like a third-string veterinarian? But what about the humanitarian effort? Or is that just another squirt of bloody gender fluid for the ruins, as we were no longer allowed to question either the science of biology, of gender identity, or sex identity, as we get caught up in the pseudoscience of woke identity ideologies? Again, the science of psychologies allowed loud and rainbow proud flagged out to be shroud in a crowd of a dowdy old science of empirical evidence. But hold providence for the latest shaking faith in science by RFK questioning the past pandemic. Again, I don't dare you suggest science or biology in gender, sex, or identity. Those contrived constructs are assigned at birth by whichever so-called doctor is paid to deliver by C-section, because this is a planned pregnancy and can be paid on a payment plan. As a financial science suggests, it's a birth canal born baby. Then the almighty dollar is delivered to whichever doctor happens to be on call that day. That should be a crime. Suggesting we cut you open, then have a natural birth, because of its more worth to the people being paid than the mother and the child that is entering this earth. What a curse! Or not come through that canal that can be also a scientific metric, often discussed by Freud to modern day philosophers, scholars, doctors, and scientists as the biology and chemistry of being naturally entering through the void. Birth canal is a natural native birthright taken by a greedy doctor and hospital's Planned Parenting agenda. That way, everything runs according to schedule. The labor is induced. No rushing to the hospital when the water breaks, no drama, mama, or ambulances dancing through traffic. This way, it's just natural being induced by Big Pharma on a plan of medicine that will deliver the baby on their time. Not as the stars align by the grand divine design, but by the person collecting the fine. And after all, the cesarean section named after the great Caesar himself, no doubt suggesting the number of wombs he molested and impregnated were so many they needed a speedy, seedy, greedy way to save the child. And rarely, if ever, did the mother make it, or would they care if she did. Her kid was the son of a king. That's the old classic toxic masculinity. Perhaps that's when the patriarch was at its pinnacle. But to that end, let's send all new men into shame and blame them today for everything and reshape them by mind and kind, so too far behind the line of the rest that the two is by science design molests. So your baby is born, and if not stolen or mixed up in the incubation room, and then when they steal your placenta and umbilical cord to sell much more rich people who can afford it, then your new king or queen has already been dragged through its first few organ donations and transactions as it's slapped on the butt of abuse and assigned a gender and a number to welcome you to this state. How great! And where, if then, that child should be confused by the indoctrination of misfortunate misinformation, it can easily tell any teacher, and then that child will be regender styled to suit their confused new gender identity expression. And if the parents question that, they are transgressors and lessers of their child's love, where they could be jailed and fined and have their child now the property of the government. Just like the President Biden said recently in his prideful speech, "Your children are all of our children." What? And same in Canada, where if any parent questions with concern about their child's curiosity with gender reassignment, then the parents are denied their being the parents, and the provincial government steps in to take the kid, transition it with gender-affirming care, surgically, permanently, physically, mentally, emotionally, changing and scarring that person, all in the name of science, using a scientific procedure to mutilate a healthy body for what is a confused mind and a scientifically used, abusing social science and psychologically science, the science of propaganda to change everything. But follow and trust the science of biology when it's perfect for you. But don't forget the pandemic. Again, seems the populace memory is being scientifically erased as we follow and trust the science with blind faith for experimental new treatments and ignore the scientific evidence for experimental new procedures using science of Frankenstein to justify identity, simultaneously ignoring history and biology. But now, recently, when RFK questions the ethics, method, and manners of what was mandated and manipulated, it's called by the mainstream to be Americans' faith in science. Wow. How scientific. Perhaps the local science fair should be renamed the Science Unfair. Or would that be considering misgendering? How offensive is a threat for democracy? For shame, the hypocrisy. What about liberty and freedom? When will the man on the grassy knoll take the man on Capitol Hill out for a stroll? What runs in the family stays in the family. Historically, the only way to shut up a Kennedy, beyond banning them on social media platforms and ignoring them in the news, and then side-railing them in salacious headlines, is to find them hanging like an alleged Clinton informant. Swing low. But this isn't a race about the presidential one, as the running for presidential office is a big deal in the American wheel of political science. RFK was just wanting to expose the lies, hypocrisy of tyrants and tell the truth. The proof is in science. His science, investigated, unearthed, like an old uncle saying, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." Of course, a more modern draft of that dodge today would be something more akin to, "Ask not what your country is doing for you, ask what your country is doing to you." RFK would say it's to do with something on the spectrum, as the prideful white light through a prism does shine the gay rainbow on us all. Perhaps there is some truth to the science that suggests more and more people are on the spectrum, and perhaps that's because of a certain chemical spray or a way they have systematically and scientifically been giving babies and children more injections. And perhaps the press says that's all inflections of conspiracy, crazy nut jobs, and extremists. So, ban that man, silence his entire clan, and plan from the grave to brave allegations. These alleged allergies are allergic, and you, RFK, a tragic tragedy of traitors. And this is edging on treason. How dare you call this a dictatorship? How do you think you are? Fox News? These are sketchy views to see. Are we being led by the blind, pretending the world is ending, or can we really see it's a woolly veil over the horizon? And when will we be realizing it's perhaps a loaded deck? Nano is the cool new tech, so they want your neck. Heck, this is just a show for entertainment. No real info, fake news, it's clear, and present Russian propaganda. Conspiracy theories, financed by things made in China. The RFK interview with Jordan Peterson was canceled and banished offline, while his interview with Joe Rogan was too big to stop Joe. but no way, no how can they stop Joe now. And thank goodness there's someone with a pair of brass balls worth willing to call a pothead black or on crack or stand against the vaccine of the back against the woke attacks with a jacked up history and how to fight, being ringside every night. There's no way to swing toe to toe with Joe. And I don't mean Biden, I'm referring to the kingpin ding ding Rogan, who can and is still forever always the man. And thank God for that man and that faith. Spotify has him in place where he wins harvest gold against the best old Neil Young, who had to fold and kneel down as Rogan can now be or should be ever called. The world of words and needs nerds like men, like Rogan, who fight for what we say and right the right of the First Amendment strongly. Strong-armed and disarmed by big tech, alarms that Big Brother reaches around borders and orders to disorder the New World agenda. So it's bad news to bear for the Americans who swear on the First Amendment, because it's easily overstepped with big tech. It doesn't protect beyond the 49th parallel or Taco Bell. Run for the borders, it's an order of only sparingly upheld in the strongholds and land of the American dream, quickly becoming a nightmare scene. However, between Rogan and RFK, recently another Big Brother or science other got involved with his too paid off sense of nonsense, as he densely went on the defensive and pensive against Rogan and RFK when Dr. Hotez, a comical potential con artist, called himself a doctor, allegedly not a shill for the will of Big Pharma, but this so-called expert in science, Dr. Hotez, who could easily be Jack Black in a cartoon character about a wake and bake fake woke doctor who poses as a doctor to score more meds in his movie titled The School of Doc, as a bow tie wearing white coat after the scripts to sell on the side to make rent, driving a dented old van and paying the doctor of Doolittle while eating drugs like Skittles, ironically, comically touching a lot of patients in the humorous Patch Adams way before being busted by the law for not having an actual medical science degree. But that's just a joke. Unlike the real guy, a professional doctor, we should all take very seriously when he suggests we should all get boosted till we're OxyClean inside and out. No doubt a ridiculous amount of backtracking, little fact-checking, but nonetheless, Dr. Hotez threw his dirty shirt into the ring with Joe to get OxyClean like a bad meme, as even Elon Musk and a slew of other rich people too threw good money after great money, as Rogan offered $100,000 to Hotez's charity of choosing. The pothead soon sweetened the pot to a mind-dropping $1.5 million, but Hotez scientifically denied the offer an opportunity to debate RFK on the details of the vaccine and left the cash on the digital table, unable to scientifically debate the great RFK. Missing a charity payday allegedly because it's not scientific or ethical for a real scientist to debate a conspiracy theorist. That's discrimination of science and misinformation of misgendering Hotez as a man. Jack Black, no offense, Jack Black, he is in fact a real man with real tact and would rock the attack, rocking the vote. But on that note, not the scientific community of Dr. Hotez, who does not have or believe in natural immunity, but is paid for and paid off with impunity. Call it terrific or horrific, but Hotez will call it scientific. As for RFK, his science is political and albeit under critical scrutiny. He's still rising the freedom flag for the American we all dream of, the American where the American dream is not dead, but a meme, but it's a rising, reprising scene. And may we become more OxyClean, help shine the divine time for a true red and white blue time. The two not bad though. Rogan would have had the most watched show in the world. Oh wait, he already does. Score 1 for science of being a truth seeker, the podcast god, speaker of free speech. Science is the proof of free speech is truth. Stay free, speak free, be free.